Thanks everybody for coming today. I'm here today to talk about open source software and a project that I created called Appium. And the point of this talk is to tell a story, but also to help you guys understand some of the lessons I learned when I made an open source project. And hopefully by the end of this you'll understand a bit better how open source works, how you can contribute to it more effectively, how you can participate, how you can create your own, and how to consume it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Cuellar. That's my Twitter, by the way. If you have a good photo of me, please tweet it. My LinkedIn photo is really old. It's like 6 years old, so if someone takes a better one and tweets it at me, I'll change it. I created Appium. I'm currently in charge of front-end development at a company called Foodit in London. We're a startup that does online food ordering, like Grubhub or Just Eat, or I don't know what the Lithuanian equivalent is. Previously, I headed testing at Shazam, which is that fun app you hold up in the air in the club and it tells you what song's playing. And before that, I worked at a dating site on Microsoft Outlook and a bunch of other things. And then a long, long time ago, I was in a university like this, and I got a degree. That's not that important. So I'm here today to talk about Appium. Who here knows what Appium is? Show of hands. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Better than last time. Anyways, for those of you who don't know what Appium is an open source mobile automation framework. So for those of you familiar with Selenium, it's the equivalent of Selenium for your mobile apps and your desktop apps. So it's Selenium for apps, I guess is the way we kind of market it. It's open source. So anyways, I'll start off by sort of telling a story of how it came to be. We'll talk about what's coming next in Appium, and then I'll share with you some lessons I've learned doing this whole open source thing. So I'd like to say it always starts with the most terrifying 5 words in testing. Does anyone know what these 5 words are? Manual? No, it's these 5 words. So who here comprehends why this is terrifying? Okay, so for everyone but those two, I'll tell you why this is terrifying. Most of us probably work on websites or mobile apps. A long time ago, there were desktop applications that shipped on CDs. And then we had this .com boom and this web revolution, and we started writing websites and bigger web applications. And one of the nice things about a web application is that all of the code is hosted on your server. So when the code has a defect, you control the place where it lives. You can fix the defect and you can deploy that fix, and your customers should get it relatively instantly, barring browser caching and a few other anomalies. With mobile, this is not the case at all. Apple and Google control the means by which the code is distributed, and to some degree the users control it as well by opting in or out of your updates. So when you make a mistake, it can be a lot more costly for you and a lot more time consuming to fix, and a lot more damaging, which from a QA perspective means you need to get it right. So with the App Store in particular, they used to have, it's gotten better recently, I'd say it's more like a 24 to 48 hour review process. In the past it was probably closer to a week or 2. Which meant if you made a mistake on your mobile app, let's say a revenue-losing mistake, you would have to live with the consequences of that for several weeks, if not longer, depending on when the user decided to open the App Store and put an update on your app. So it's quite important that you get it right. So this all sounded quite familiar to me. I worked on Microsoft Office, which came on one of these things. Who here knows what this is? I'm glad you're laughing. I've had crowds where no one was like, what is that? So for those of you under 25 and under 30 maybe, this is an optical media disc. There's a DVD-ROM. Used to, in the dinosaur days, there was this little drive on your computer and you opened it, or somebody just slipped it in. This optical disc spun around and the software was read off of it. Nice thing being, you can transfer a lot of data quite quickly on an optical disc. The bad news being, you actually have to make something and ship it, which takes time. So I don't know how long it takes to make and ship one of these, but let's say it takes a couple of days, best case, more realistically months. So you had to get this right as well, and the consequences were much more dire. So when I worked on things like Outlook and Excel and other products in Office, we had a much more intensive process than we did when I worked on websites. And moving forward into the mobile world, I was working at a dating site that was very popular on the App Store. I had to come up with a strategy as the QA manager as to how to deal with this. So I thought back to this and I thought, well, this isn't going to fly with the VCs. You know, we're on venture capital money, we have targets we have to meet. If we're doing 3-month code freezes, and reviewing every change line by line for the last 3 months of the development cycle, doing semi-annual releases, this is not going to apply in the startup world. So this was not really an option. But I also thought back to some other things I did on Outlook, and that was that we did a lot of automation, a lot of unit testing, a lot of GUI automation, a lot of integration testing. And I looked around for mobile, and there were good unit testing frameworks that we could use, but there wasn't really a good end-to-end test framework, a GUI automation framework. This one was what was out at the time. This was 2011 or whenever it was. I won't go into detail why each of these tools is terrible. This one is dead now. That one is still quite popular, and the other one really isn't. But they all have their own defects. And I tried to use them, and I tried to automate app with them, and I came to the conclusion that they were so terrible it wasn't worth using them. For different reasons. So I came up with the idea, well, let's make something different. So I came up with Appium. And what Appium is it takes the Selenium protocol, the JSON wire Selenium WebDriver protocol, implements it on mobile devices, and now you can use all the techniques, all the frameworks you know and love from Selenium on your mobile device, which is great. And nowadays, it's the most popular way to automate your mobile app, which is pretty cool. But it wasn't always that way. So when I was talking to Jason Huggins, who created Selenium, he sort of saw me give a talk at a conference on this, and we got together. These were sort of some of the criteria he came up with for what made a good mobile automation framework. And this is the philosophy behind Appium. So the first of them being, we only want to use standard APIs and techniques. A lot of the mobile automation frameworks at the time used private APIs for iOS, or did other unsavory things, and we didn't want to do any of this. We wanted to only use the things the vendors wanted to use. So in the case now, that's XUI test for iOS, and UI Automator 2 for Android. In the past, we've used UI Automator 1, instrumentation, and some other stuff for Android, and the UI Automation JavaScript library for iOS. But we've always used sanction frameworks. And I guess nowadays on Windows we use, I can't remember, it's a really generic name. It's like System Automation or something. We also wanted people to be able to code in the language of their choice. So my team wrote our Selenium automation in C#. We didn't want to have all the automation people learn a new language just to deal with mobile apps. Never mind that we had two mobile apps, one written in Java, one written in Objective-C, which would mean maintaining a test framework in both of those languages, which is also undesirable. So I thought, let's make something that works in all languages. The third principle was do not modify the application under test. The popular frameworks at the time, such as Frank and Kif, and I think Calabash eventually got rid of the app requirement, but at the time they required you to modify the app and include their framework inside. We never have required a framework built in. I'm always toying with changing this rule because there's some really cool advantages to putting stuff in your app, but I think Appium will always be usable without modifying your app, which is good. But however, there have been some tempting improvements that could be made with onboard SDKs and things, but as of yet, none of that has been done. And like, it's up to the project community, and there are a lot of people also very against it. I'm on the fence, but leaning towards starting to do some of that stuff. But as someone who does QA for a living, I know that once you modify the application under test, you sort of tainted the pool, right? So you kind of peed in the pool at that point. So your testing becomes a little less valid, but hopefully still effective, right? And lastly, something that was going to be free and open source was important, because you don't want to be beholden to a vendor. If this thing is not free and open source, I'm not doing a project for fun with people, I'm founding a company, which is not what I want to do. And also, as you've seen, the trend is towards using open source technologies and having larger companies provide support around them. So even people like HP Enterprise and other big companies are no longer only pushing their proprietary frameworks, but they're also supporting things like Appium. Appium has support in the Amazon cloud, has support in the Google cloud, has support by defacto, by HP Enterprise, by Xamarin recently announced. So everyone is supporting this, which is nice, and this is sort of the trend you're seeing with hell freezing over. I think SQL Server now runs on Linux. You can do Bash in Windows, Visual Studio's on the Mac. Everything's crazy right now. And I'll sort of talk about that in a minute, because I worked at Microsoft at a time when open source was a dirty word. It was not spoke of. Didn't read about it. You were actually told this by legal. You said, don't go to the websites, don't look at the code, don't learn anything about it. And clearly things have changed now, which is great. At a high level, this is how it works. You have a test script. It sends these HTTP protocol requests over to the Appium server, which runs usually on your local machine, but in theory, if you use someone like Amazon or Sauce Labs, it could run in the cloud. It does the magic using sanctioned frameworks to your mobile application, and then it sends back to you basically the response. So we implement this communication layer in a dozen different languages or so. And by implement, I mean Selenium implements it, so we just borrow it. And that's how we get language support everywhere. And then we hide all of the... Our goal is to abstract away all of the platform-specific stuff, so you don't have to worry about learning whatever the newest, hottest framework is, or any framework for what you're trying to automate. We have a protocol that can do things using frameworks on devices, be it Windows apps, be it eventually Mac apps, but I can't talk about that today yet because it's not done, but hopefully in the next few weeks there'll be a Mac app stuff officially out. And then of course your mobile, Android, and iOS apps. So the code looks just like Selenium. I might need to update this because there's iOS 10 now, but in general it looks pretty much like this. It's Selenium, you just give a couple extra capabilities, and if you're in Java, you have to make a different kind of class, but some languages you don't even have to do that. And lo and behold, the code for web automation is now the code for mobile automation. Same thing on Android, only even more capabilities. Though some of these have now been sort of, you can take these out. We've been a little bit smarter with Android. And good old finding element code, just like you used to in Selenium. You can look up by class name, which is the automation element type. So in Android, it's like column.android.widget.whatever. On iOS, it used to be UIA button and stuff. In the old framework, now it's like XCUI button. Apple's changed their underlying framework. You need to update the slide. Also, you can find by XPath, so we support fully compliant XPath in both iOS and Android. So if you want to write something really custom that looks at the text on entries or different properties or whatever, all of XPath is at your disposal. And unlike on Selenium Automation for web, I would actually recommend XPath as being used for very complicated things. I mean, if there is an ID or something, you should probably use it, but if not, XPath is a first-class citizen on Appium, unlike on Selenium. And then lastly, we have the old accessibility ID techniques, which I believe it's a resource ID for Android, and for iOS, it's the accessibility identifier. Cool. Actions look just like they used to. Click. I think it may be called tap in some frameworks, since you're not really clicking and tapping, but same idea. Same keys. We have these advanced gestures. I need to update because the syntax actually changed. We now support the multi-action stuff, so you build these things and you perform them. That will still work though, that's still in there, but it sort of masks a difference in the code. Web user supported, both iOS and Android, so if you have web content or if you have a fully Cordova PhoneGap app, all that's supported. The way it works in Appium is we have different automation contexts. So the default context is your native shell, which is your native elements, your Cocoa elements on iOS, or Material Design on Android. I don't know what they call their UI framework. But you have that. But if you have web content, each web view you have in your app shows up as a different automation context in Appium. And all you have to do is call the switch to command, or .context in Java, and you can switch to that context and start automating in that context. So once you switch to a web context, you just write Selenium Automation like you always have, CSS selectors, whatever you want to do, it all works. It works because we basically open a connection to the underlying browser through the debugging protocol, and then we send it to the old Selenium commands. So Chrome driver runs on Android for Chrome Windows. Things like Crosswalk, if you use those, a bit dicey. I think older versions of Crosswalk might work. Newer ones, maybe actually they all work now, but there's some horrible combination of things that might not work. Like where I work, we use Crosswalk Android app and a protractor front end, and somewhere between, or sorry, Angular front end, and somewhere between using protractor on Crosswalk on Android, you may have some pain. But in general, normal web apps, and certainly on iOS, it works pretty well. So anyways, back to the story. So now you guys know what Appium is. That's where we are now, but it wasn't always that way. So it all started when I did a conference in London called the Slugging Conference, which I'm doing again in a month, which I'm kind of excited. I haven't done it since the time I showed Appium at it. But I went there to talk about something entirely different. I went there to do a talk on sort of the page object model across different platforms, so sort of moving it to mobile. And I did the talk, and I showed a demo where I had an iPhone and a website test running the same code. So we wrote the test at sort of a user level, I log in, I try to send a message to someone, they get the message. That's sort of what the test looked like. And then we implemented a page object and a library of actions in each platform. So we shared all the tests, but underneath it, there was different code supporting them, which was kind of cool because our product manager said these are the tests. Disabled, unsubscribed users shouldn't be able to message people, or people with premium accounts should be able to send 100 messages, that kind of thing. We can write all those tests, and if we implement all the methods on each platform with a common interface, we can reuse them. So that was the theme of the talk. But all people cared about was like, oh wow, you're using Selenium to control iOS. And I thought it was kind of cool too, but I hadn't planned to do a talk on it, because I just figured, oh, there's probably something else out there. I'm going to this conference to find the thing that I really need. So I'm using this thing now, it's cool, but I'm sure I will go to this conference and there will be something cooler and better. And that's what I'm going to come back with and use. And it turned out actually not to be the case. Everyone was actually struggling with the issue as well. And there were other solutions out there, but none of them were presented at the conference. But I did meet some people who worked on some similar things, and then eventually this other conference was scheduled in San Francisco. And there we sort of assembled all the people, or say Sauce Labs assembled all the people, doing cool things with mobile. And we all got into a room and we sort of put all the frameworks in a steel cage and had them fight each other. And eventually one of them was supposed to walk out the winner, and lucky for me, it ended up being Appium, I think. But at that point, the open source project really started to take off. So then things just started happening. I went to this conference and I showed this code, I put it on GitHub, and I didn't really expect anything out of it. And then one day, like, a Twitter account showed up, and at Appium Devs, and someone started tweeting from it. It had nothing to do with that. A website started to come up, someone made a pull request to support Android. Things just started happening, all without me being involved, which is an interesting idea of open source. But anyways, all that started happening, and then it started to grow. And one of the more important aspects of the growth was social media. So for the first year of the project, we would answer pretty much any Stack Overflow question. Me or Jonathan personally would answer it. That won't happen anymore, so please don't expect that. But if you message the message board or Stack Overflow, we would answer it. We have a forum, we'd answer everything. Every morning I'd wake up at 7, and for an hour I'd just answer back. When you're starting a project, that's really important because no one knows how to use it. And the barrier to making a successful project is obviously getting people to use it. Fortunately, we're based on Selenium, so that's a protocol and a framework that people already understand. So that minimized the amount of growing and sort of startup pains that caused to get going, but it was still there. Another important thing is that we had this clear mission philosophy thing that I showed earlier, even though I sort of waver on one piece of it sometimes. That's always been there, so the people that wanted to join the project knew sort of what they were getting themselves into. And as sort of conflicts arose, we had this sort of rules and guidelines for what we're supposed to be that would often be quite useful. We were tempted by cool ideas people had. I also would travel around, and I still do. Anyone who wants me to come, I'll go wherever. I'll do bar mitzvahs, birthday parties. Give me a nice hotel room and fly me somewhere interesting, I'm good. And then lastly, Twitter and social media are huge. I always tell the story about, I think we had 25, 30 stars on GitHub, like not a lot. And one day, some guy in Japan found us and thought we were really cool and decided to tweet to all his followers, oh, you should check out Appium. And he had like 500,000 followers or something. And the next day we looked and like Appium has 200 stars on GitHub. It's like on tenfold overnight. And we searched through Twitter and we found it. It's this guy in Japan. So for like the first 6 months of the project, all the questions were in Japanese. And Google Translate, it seemed to be positive. People seem to be enjoying it. I really don't know. It could just be a bad translation. But that was quite interesting. So yes, social media is cool. Another interesting thing about open source, which differs from other sorts of products, is that it starts to take on a life of its own, kind of like Frankenstein here, and that's a good thing. Obviously, I'm one person who doesn't get paid to do this, so I can only do so much, especially since I have a real job. But other people who work for companies may want to pay them to work on it, and there are a few other companies such as Google and Amazon and defacto and Sauce Labs, obviously, and Microsoft and a few others that pay people to work on Appium almost full time, which is quite nice. So, sort of a side factor that I have very little influence over the project now, but the good thing is there are people working on it and it's solving problems for people. Like I said, Android was added one day. I had nothing to do with that. Never intended for, and I wasn't against Android being supported, but my problem was more with the App Store. Like on Android, when you made a mistake in an an hour, you can replace it on everybody's phone. It's not as big a deal. But when I broke iOS and couldn't make any money on it, my boss had it for like 2 more weeks till it got fixed. Even though it only took us a day to fix it, it was like 2 weeks to get that out to people. One day people decided it was a JavaScript app. I wasn't for that, but in hindsight that was probably a good idea, mainly because the JavaScript open source community is a lot more active than the .NET one. I originally wrote it in .NET because that's what I needed for work, that's what I like coding in. But it's in JavaScript now, which is good. I'll talk about that point more later. And then I think another point, I lost the commit bit on my own project, so that was a bit interesting. I still don't know who did it, but I have a theory. Nonetheless, I recovered it shortly thereafter and let people know that was not cool. Also, I applied to speak at a conference, and my proposal was rejected, and I didn't understand why, because it seemed really pertinent to the conference I was applying to. And so I emailed the conference organizers and said, what are you guys doing? I need to be there, I need to talk about this. And they said, oh, we didn't reject your proposal because we don't want an Appium talk. We rejected it because we had too many Appium proposals. We picked 2 other ones, and I was like, oh. And I was kind of disappointed because I really wanted to go wherever this was. I think it was in New York. I was like, oh, I could really use like a free trip to New York. That'd be fun. Take the girlfriend, right? It'd be good. And then I didn't get it. But in hindsight, it's like, oh, this is great. Like now there are other people that think this thing that I work on is so cool that they want to talk about it too, which in the end is way more scalable and way better. And I hope that nowadays I don't do a huge percentage of the Appium talks. I'm doing this one, but I think there's probably a dozen other people that do these. And I don't know who they are, but they do them, and that's great. Another interesting thing is the scale of it all. So it scales and gets out of hand quite quickly. So I find tools to do that are largely forums and GitHubs and release notes and things like that. You're not going to be able to read every change. Appium has dozens of changes a day at this point. I don't have time to read them all. But I do read the release notes, and that's how I keep up. And we keep the quality high by demanding people write unit tests. So as part of the code review, we extensively scrutinize the unit tests and the integration tests. And that not only documents what the code is supposed to do, but keeps the code in a better state for the first few years of the project. Those of you who use Appium might have noticed it broke quite often in random, unexpected ways. I'd like to think in the last year that's diminished quite a bit since we had the big unit testing initiative with 1.5. And we did an entire rewrite of the code base too, that helped as well. So if you don't learn anything else, this is the slide you should remember. And this is going to seem really dumb to like those of you who are very familiar with open source. But I would just like to reiterate that I came from the corporate Microsoft background, where open source was, don't ask, don't tell. And so going into this, I tried to do things one way and realized the correct way to do them. So I wrote the thing in .NET. I like .NET. It's a great language. It's open now, but it wasn't then. We switched to JavaScript, and immediately it had more open source support. Go figure. Quite obvious thinking about it now, why would you write an open source project in a proprietary language? But, hindsight's 2020, right? I used to share the code with people via email at first, just being lazy. Like, I wasn't into the whole GitHub thing then. Granted, this was 2011, so GitHub wasn't the means it is now. But don't do that. Put it on GitHub. Save your Outbox space. And the nice thing is, you can just send people a link if they want to know what it is. And people can add to it, people can contribute, they can comment on it. It's just a much better way to do business. Used to, we had no docs. If you want to give people to use your project, the best thing you can do is document it. Trust me. I now put my slides up, so this deck or something similar is probably up. That helps people. Some of them have like 10, 20,000 views, which I don't know who the hell wants to watch this stuff, but great. And then lastly, post all your responses publicly, so Google will sort out all the questions for you. And I would respond to people via email. One person would get the answer, and that was great for them. But when I post it on a forum, many people now ask Google the same question, and they get the answer straight away, and I'm not involved, which I prefer. Not because I don't like people, but just because it's a lot of time to answer everyone's question. So, another interesting sort of peculiarity, I'll say, of open source is how conflict is resolved. So, in the corporate world, like, I manage people for a living, and I would never manage people like this, but I will say conflict is best kept out in the open in open source. I would never tell 2 employees, why don't you go yell at each other in the lunchroom until you guys decide one of you is the winner, or one of you just gets angry and leaves. But in open source, that tends to be the way things happen. So we've made a couple of decisions that have resulted in one person leaving. And also, that's not the worst thing in the world, because they're not going to leave open source. They're probably just going to go write their own project that they think is better. And if they have some good ideas, you can look at them, and if it's licensed the right way, you can incorporate them into your project. So it's not like if I make one of my employees upset and he goes to work at Google, or I never benefit from him again. It's a bit different. So I would recommend keeping it out in the open. The other side effect is that people begin to understand more and more about why you're making the decisions you are. And it feels a bit more democratic, despite all the yelling and flaming and trolling. Please have thick skin if you go on the internet. I'm not rude, but it's just the culture of open source. I don't know why. Anyway, other thing, sometimes if you want to make a decision, just write code, make a pull request, because people aren't going to look the gift horse in the mouth, as we say. If there's a pull request that solves the problem, it may not be the philosophical ideal solution, but it works, and no one else has written anything. So if you want a little more power than you might think you have, write some code. Pro tip. Also, having multiple projects doing the same thing isn't that bad either. So like I said, if there is a disagreement, people decide, oh, we're going to do it this way. Competition is good. I don't make any money off this. If one of you creates the Appium killer tomorrow, it's not going to put me out on the street. So I don't worry about it. I would be much happier if mobile testing was really easy. So please compete with Appium. So anyways, nowadays, 4,000 stores, 2,000 forks, over 150 people have submitted a commit to Appium. I think it's closer to 200 or 300. It's hard to add up now because we're on several repos on GitHub. I would estimate that we have somewhere like 250,000 people using Appium right now. I know our V1, which was several years ago, had 150,000. It's quite a lot of people using it these days. So don't worry, you're in good company if you decide to use it. New in 1.6, which was just released last week, we have Windows app support as written by Microsoft, which I think is really cool. When I left Microsoft, we still had the don't talk about open source policy. That was like 5 years ago, but now they're writing and contributing to my project, which is really cool. And they provided high quality support for all of your Windows apps. So they no longer have the Windows Phone thing, they killed that, but they have universal Windows support, so phone and desktop. Last week, or is it this week? Monday, we officially joined the JS Foundation. So it used to be the jQuery Foundation. There's about a couple dozen JavaScript projects in it. So we all share licensing and all that kind of stuff. You can read more about it if you just Google JS, or just go to js.foundation. We released a new backend for iOS, which supports 9.3 and future versions. Apple deprecated the lovely iOS framework, which I maligned earlier, that I wrote the Appium support for. But now we've implemented the new framework, so you can use that. The cool people at GUI have added support for their platform. It's a TV app platform. It's neat, hopefully. I think maybe someday we'll do Apple TV. Yeah, it's kind of the missing piece at this point, but I don't think that many people work at Apple TV yet. So. And the GUI Automator 2 support is now available for Android, so we finally upgraded the Android SDK, and it's much faster, much better. What's coming next? Mac application support is done. There's some cool people. I won't name them because they haven't exactly contributed it yet, but they're just talking to their lawyers to make sure that it's kosher, and then they will do that. Also, we have new GUIs that people are starting to work on, so everyone complains the GUIs don't work anymore. I wrote them a long time ago. I don't maintain them anymore, but there's some people working on writing a universal one, I think in Electron. So it's going to be like Slack or something like that. So it'll work on Linux, Mac, and Windows. One code base to be better. And then hopefully we'll get some better onboarding material. I'm working on some of that right now. Cool, so I think I have like a little less than 10 minutes left. And then I have like 2 minutes of talking after this. So anyone have any questions about anything for me? Anything, sure.
How your solution compared to something like a Xamarin Test Cloud?
Xamarin Test Cloud supports Appium now as of last week. Actually, it's a beta at the moment. I'm trying to get an invite to the beta. I haven't accepted my application yet. I don't know why. I need to go talk to those people. They're nearby. Well, I say nearby. I'm from America. They're in Denmark. Not too far. Xamarin Test Cloud is like it's a different product. It's like a cloud solution for organizing your test results, both manual, automated, and it provides some utilities. Like it does support some frameworks they write. There used to be like a Xamarin framework. Now they're part of Microsoft, and I think they're moving over to other frameworks. But They used to have like a C# framework for automating Xamarin-only apps, but now they also support Appium. And then they also have like a dial up a browser in the cloud kind of thing where you can say, oh, I want an Android running Chrome 10, and it'll give you like a VNC session to it. But it's mainly like a framework, or it's like a product that organizes all your testing in the cloud kind of thing. It does have a framework with it, but they also support Appium. So it's a hard one to sort of explain what it is. So yeah, Appium is sort of a piece that is used in Xamarin Test Cloud optionally, and then Xamarin Test Cloud is more like a test collaboration solution for organizations. Not so much a framework for automating devices specifically, even though they do have a proprietary one. Alright, I'll finish early.
Right? Like, if I'm a company and I have some software, should they open source it? And what's the point of it?
Okay, what are the benefits of open sourcing software? It's a good question. The answer is sometimes you should do it, sometimes you shouldn't. So there's an interesting talk, I can't remember the guy's name, I'll find it maybe and I'll send it to someone, but on open source by default, where by default your project was open source. I think that's a bit crazy. But in theory, things that aren't a competitive advantage for you or aren't what your core business is, I think are good candidates for open sourcing. So if you're, let's say you're Shazam, somewhere where I've worked, you're not going to open source your music recognition algorithm, right? Because that's where you make your money. But if you have like a carousel component on your iOS app that just slides between album covers, that's not a competitive advantage for you. And you would benefit from other people sort of maintaining that framework and contributing things to it. So you might consider something like that. So I guess I think it's good for shared problems that companies have that aren't things that they directly compete for. So something like Android, that's an operating system people run on. Like Google makes its money on it, right? But for other people, like contributing to Android is good for them because they all share it. Or MySQL is a good example. We all need a database. If I work at Shazam, I'm not a database company. I don't want to hire a bunch of database engineers. I should just contribute all the fixes I make to MySQL, and everyone else with the same problem contribute them. And then we all sort of work on this thing together and solve a common problem together without sort of doing bad things for business, right? I like open source because it levels the playing field between the big and the small. So big companies can afford Microsoft SQL and can afford to spend, $10,000 a server. But if you're doing a startup or you're an educational institution or you're a nonprofit, you don't have access to those sorts of tools without things like open source. And so contributing to open source sort of levels the playing field for the people who don't have the big pocketbooks for one reason or another to have the cool technology and build the cool things without spending money. And of course you don't get like, if you buy that much SQL Server, Microsoft will have a person on the phone for you 24/7, but that may not be what you need, right? So I really like it, and I like that Appium has become the standard because there are people like Perfecto and Sauce Labs and HP Enterprise that are competing in the mobile automation space, and having certain things might be an advantage for them. But for most companies, they just want to test their app, which isn't really their business, right? They don't want to build frameworks. They want to write Shazam. They want to write a dating app. They want to write a grocery store app. They don't want to write an automation framework. So work together on open source, and everyone benefits. But yes, don't open source your bread and butter. Even though I say that Shazam music recognition algorithm is a white paper, and you can read it. But anyway, the optimizations they've made on top of that are not publicly available. But the basic algorithm is actually open source. All right, I will finish up with this. Here's my opinion of why I think Appium succeeded. From day one, we had a clear purpose and vision. All the other frameworks suck. I have to modify my app. I have to write in weird languages. They use shady technology. Let's fix that. And let's make it free. From day one, that's what we are. 5 years later, that's still what we are. And that's why I think we've been successful. Another reason is that we leveraged the popularity of Selenium. Selenium was a widely accepted, very popular open source project. We piggybacked off of that a bit, which really lowered the barrier to entry to people and made it much quicker to get started. We've always tried to be inclusive. We support many platforms. Like I said, we use things we're familiar with. And lastly, we put a lot of work into it. I don't write a lot of code today. I probably haven't submitted a patch to Appium in a year and a half at least. My contribution these days is largely documentation and outreach. Coming to places like this and talking to people like you and just talking about it. But there are other people that write the code. So I do spend an obscene amount of time in hotel rooms. Though I have not gotten airline status with anyone yet, which I'm very disappointed in. but I guess I just buy all the other ones. But I do have, like, I didn't get the hotel one. I didn't get that fun. But anyways, I spend a lot of time away from home, which I find fun, but it sometimes would be nice to be home. So anyways, we're very inclusive. We support all of this stuff. I have Swift up there, more as aspirational. It's sort of supported, but no one's bothered to actually write Selenium framework for Swift, which they should. But you can use the Objective-C one for some weird magic, and it works in Swift. We go to lots of places. I need to update this. I think I've been to probably 30 countries talking about Appium, which is pretty cool. I will go anywhere, like I said. So once again, your daughter's turning 15. If you have, 15th birthday, wedding anniversary, whatever, I will do it. Anyway, and then lastly, and we've translated. We don't have a Lithuanian translation, but if someone wants to contribute one, glad they take it. I was recently told our French translation sucks. I can't tell, but anyway, I told that person, we'd more than be happy if you'd fix it for us. Just send me what it should be, and I'll put it up. So yeah, if anyone wants to put a Lithuanian translation on the website, go for it. If not, I don't know what the closest language we have to it is. English. Fair enough. Yeah, and then we've always, for the most part, supported Mac and Apple and Linux, so we try to support everything. So anyways, I always end with the Steve Jobs quote. I'm not a huge Steve Jobs fan, but I like this quote, so I'm going to use it. He said, life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you, and you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again. And I think this quote summarizes the Appium project perfectly. I went out there, I looked at all this stuff, I actually had the intent of like, what's Google doing, what's Facebook doing, what are all these other people doing? Surely I can do what they're doing. Surely they figured it out. And actually they hadn't. So I'm not a genius. Like, I work at a company that delivers food to people. Like, we don't fly rockets into space and land them on ships or whatever Elon Musk does for a living. Like, we just deliver food to people. So like I said, any one of you, all of you, question what's out there. It's like nice to go first at a conference like this. Every tool you see today, look at it very skeptically because it might not be the right tool. And if one of you, like I said, has an Appium killer within you that you just haven't open sourced yet, please do it. It's good for everyone to have good software. And like I said, my children I don't have any children. If I did, they would still eat. I don't feel bad for me. No harm will come to me. But anyways, question what's out there. Don't look at what Google, look at what Facebook's doing, but know that the people that work there are no smarter than you, they're no better than you. You can come up with a cool solution. And yeah, and share your ideas with people. Like, I share a lot of my ideas with people, and most of them are total and utter crap. But I had one good idea once, and I shared it with people at a conference, and 5 years later, I've gotten to travel around the world and talk about it, and now we have a workable mobile automation solution, which we didn't have 5 years ago. And that's really cool. So it could happen to you, I guess. And lastly, this is all the app info. Please follow me on Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but I feel like at some point having an enormous amount of Twitter followers might be useful. Like if there's someone I need to enact vigilante justice on or just harass, or I don't know what I would use it for, but I just kind of want it there, It's like the nuclear weapon, right? Just to have it. But anyways, I tweet cool stuff though about tech occasionally. And I don't know, it helps my ego a little bit, I'm only at 600 followers. I feel like it should be more. I don't know. Thank you for inviting me here. I look forward to having a good conference, and hopefully you guys have learned something about open source Appium and you won't make the same dumb mistakes I have. No excuses now. I'll give you the talk. Even if you work at Microsoft, you know now. This is how you do it.